a United States senator, a former combat pilot, a man who flew missions for this country, just walked out of a classified Pentagon briefing. And then he went on television and described by name which American weapons systems have been burned through in the Iran war, how deep the holes in those stockpiles go, how long it will take to fill them, and what that means if the US ever has to fight China. The Pentagon's response was immediate, and the word they used, the word that's now sitting in a formal legal review, is oath. Did he break it? This is Sunday, May 10th, 2026, and a confrontation that has been building for months just entered a new and potentially far more serious phase. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth publicly stated that Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat of Arizona, retired Navy captain, may have violated his oath by discussing what Hegseth described as a classified Pentagon briefing on national television. The specific claim Hegseth is reacting to, Kelly appeared on CBS News' Face the Nation and told host Margaret Brennan that it is shocking how deep we have gone into these magazines when asked whether the Pentagon had briefed lawmakers on the Iran war's impact on U.S. weapons stockpiles. He then named specific systems: Tomahawk cruise missiles, the Army Tactical Missile System known as ATACMS, the RIM-161 Standard Missile 3, THAAD interceptors, and Patriot rounds, stating that these have all been hit hard, that replenishment will take years, and that the depletion could affect a hypothetical U.S. conflict with China. Hegseth's response was public and pointed. He announced that the Pentagon's legal counsel would review the comments. If you want fact-based coverage of this story without the spin, subscribe now, because there are multiple layers here, and they are moving simultaneously. Let's go through what we actually know. Senator Mark Kelly did not make vague general comments about military readiness. He was specific: Tomahawks, ATACMS, SM-3, THAAD, Patriot. These are not obscure acronyms. These are the backbone of American power projection and air defense. Kelly told the program these systems have been hit hard by the Iran war, that restocking them will require years, and that the gap in capability has implications for a potential future conflict with China. Now, here's the first thing you need to understand. Kelly didn't just volunteer this on a Sunday morning. He was responding to a direct question. A journalist asked him whether he had been briefed. He said yes, and then he answered. Hegseth's response on the social media platform X was sharp. Captain Mark Kelly strikes again. Now he's blabbing on TV, falsely and dumbly, about a classified Pentagon briefing he received. Did he violate his oath? Again? The Department of War legal counsel will review. Two words in that post are worth pausing on: falsely and again. Hegseth is not just calling this a security breach, he's calling the information itself wrong. And the word again is a direct reference to a months-long conflict between these two men that predates this moment entirely. This dispute stretches back to a video posted online last fall, in which Kelly and 5 other Democratic lawmakers, all military or intelligence veterans, directly addressed members of the U.S. Armed Forces and intelligence community, urging them to refuse illegal orders from the federal government. That video detonated in Washington. President Trump called the lawmakers traitors who had engaged in sedition at the highest level and suggested they should be in jail. He went further, suggesting they should be executed, though he later walked that statement back. The DOJ opened an investigation. A grand jury was convened. In February, that grand jury declined to return charges against any of the lawmakers. But the Pentagon didn't stop there. In November, the Pentagon launched its own investigation into Kelly, citing a federal law that allows retired service members to be recalled to active duty and subjected to court-martial or other military discipline by order of the Secretary. Hegseth formally censured Kelly. He attempted to retroactively strip him of his retired rank of captain. A federal court blocked that move. The court found the Pentagon had likely violated Kelly's First Amendment rights and those of millions of military retirees when it issued the censure. Hegseth appealed. Last week, a 3-judge panel on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals heard oral arguments. The panel appeared largely skeptical of the Pentagon's position. So this is the backdrop. A man the Pentagon has been trying to punish for months just went on national television and described, by name and by category, which American weapon systems are depleted after the Iran war. And Hegseth is now opening another legal front. The question is not simply whether Kelly broke a rule. The question is, what does this fight mean, and where does it end? Here's what nobody is saying out loud. If the information Kelly described wasn't actually classified, if it was unclassified or already known, then this review doesn't lead anywhere. But if it was classified, a sitting U.S. Senator just gave adversary intelligence services a specific inventory of what America cannot currently defend against. That's not a political story anymore. Step back for a moment from the personal conflict between Hegseth and Kelly, because there's a larger set of questions embedded in this story, and they matter far beyond Washington. The weapons systems Kelly named are not interchangeable. They perform distinct critical functions. Tomahawk cruise missiles are precision, long-range strike weapons. They hit hardened targets from hundreds of miles away. ATACMS are battlefield ballistic missiles, short-range, high lethality. THAAD and the SM-3 are ballistic missile defense interceptors. Patriot batteries defend against aircraft, cruise missiles, and tactical ballistic missiles. These are not redundant systems. If one category is depleted, you cannot simply substitute another. Kelly explicitly connected the depletion of these systems to a hypothetical conflict with China. That is not a casual remark. That is a senator who received a classified briefing publicly signaling to anyone paying attention that the United States military is operating with reduced capacity in the exact weapons categories that would matter most in a Pacific conflict. Now, Hegseth says Kelly's characterization was false and dumb. The Pentagon disputes the accuracy of what Kelly described. But here is the problem with that rebuttal. The Pentagon has not publicly clarified which part was wrong or why. A general denial does not close the intelligence gap. It just adds another layer of uncertainty. And uncertainty, when it comes to military readiness, is itself a strategic liability. Do you think this situation escalates further, or is this the kind of story that gets quietly buried? Let us know in the comments. The answer says a lot about where civilian military oversight actually stands right now. There's also a dimension here that connects directly to the Iran war's aftermath more broadly. The U.S. has been conducting military operations against Iran. Those operations consume weapons. Weapons take time and money to replace. The defense industrial base cannot simply conjure Tomahawks on demand. Production timelines for many of these systems stretch into years. That part of Kelly's claim, at least, is consistent with what defense analysts have been saying publicly for some time. So even if we set aside the classified briefing dispute entirely, there is a documented, factual conversation happening in Washington about replenishment rates and readiness gaps. Kelly stepped into that conversation with specifics he says came from a classified setting. That is what makes this legally complicated. And that is what makes the Pentagon's review consequential. Here is the angle that is not getting enough attention. The court reviewing Hegseth's earlier attempt to punish Kelly found that the Pentagon's actions likely violated the First Amendment rights not just of Kelly, but of millions of military retirees, millions of people. If the Pentagon now pursues Kelly on classified disclosure grounds, a much more serious legal theory, what precedent does that set for every military retiree who holds a security clearance and ever discusses anything publicly? The Hegseth-Kelly fight is the visible surface of a much deeper argument about where military authority ends and civilian constitutional rights begin. And that argument has not been resolved. Not even close. There is a tendency in political stories like this one to treat it as a chess match between powerful people. Hegseth moves, Kelly responds, courts intervene, lawyers file briefs, score one for each side. But zoom out slightly, and you start to see what this fight is actually costing. Senator Alyssa Slotkin, one of Kelly's co-signers on the video that started all of this, a woman who previously served at the CIA and the Pentagon, was targeted with a bomb threat in the days following the video's release and Trump's subsequent statements about the lawmakers. Read that again. A U.S. senator, former intelligence official, received a bomb threat. That is not a political abstraction. That is a real person who had to change how she moved through the world because of the fallout from a video in which she, alongside Kelly and 4 other veteran lawmakers, reminded military members that refusing unlawful orders is a bedrock principle of American military law. That principle is not controversial among military lawyers. It is taught at service academies. It is embedded in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And yet the act of saying it publicly in 2025 generated death threats and federal investigations. The 6 lawmakers in the video, Kelly, Slotkin, Representatives DeLuzio, Houlihan, Goodlander, and Crow, all served in uniform or in intelligence agencies. They are not outsiders to military culture. They are people who spent years inside the system they were addressing. And now one of them is facing a second legal threat in less than a year, this time over what he said after a classified briefing, while the Pentagon, at the same moment, is fighting a federal appeals court ruling that says it went too far the first time. For Kelly himself, the toll of this fight is something we should reckon with honestly. He is a sitting senator. He is also a retired Navy captain. He has said publicly and repeatedly, most recently after the appellate hearing last week, that he will not back down from this fight. But not backing down has a cost. It means legal exposure. It means institutional pressure from the most powerful military apparatus on earth. It means navigating a situation in which the Secretary of War has publicly questioned your honor on social media. That is not a comfortable position. And it is a position occupied by a man who, by any reasonable account, has spent his professional life serving the country he is now being accused of endangering. There is also a quieter human dimension here, the one that doesn't make it into the headlines. Military families across the country are watching this. People who served, people whose partners served, people who have children in uniform right now. They are watching a dispute about whether a senator was right or wrong to describe weapons shortfalls. And they are doing so at a moment when the Iran war has already changed what it means to be in the U.S. military in 2026. Fuel costs have risen. Military families live near bases in communities where the economic ripple effects of a prolonged conflict are real. The weapon systems Kelly named, the ones he says are running low, are not abstractions to the people who maintain them, transport them, and load them onto aircraft and ships. Those are the weapons that either protect you or don't. When a senator says those weapons are depleted, that is either the truth that somebody needed to say or a security breach that put people at risk. The answer matters enormously. And right now, nobody outside a classified setting actually knows which it is. The Pentagon's legal review could result in a referral to the Department of Justice, or it could quietly conclude that no violation occurred. Both outcomes are possible. But here's the thing. Hegseth has already appealed the court ruling on Kelly's censure. That appeal is live. The classified briefing review is now also live. And the D.C. Circuit panel last week sounded skeptical of the Pentagon's earlier legal theory. If the courts continue to push back, and if the classified briefing review goes nowhere, Hegseth will have spent months of institutional energy fighting a senator he cannot seem to stop. And Kelly will still be standing. What does the Pentagon do then? Pull all the way back and look at what this story is actually about. It is not simply about Pete Hegseth and Mark Kelly. It is not simply about one classified briefing or one television interview. It is about a collision between two systems of power and accountability that have not yet figured out how to coexist in the current moment. On one side, the executive branch's assertion that military discipline extends to retired officers who hold elected office, that classified information belongs entirely to the institution that classified it, and that a senator who discusses a briefing publicly, even in Congress's oversight capacity, is subject to Pentagon authority. On the other side, a federal court's finding that the Pentagon likely crossed a constitutional line, that military retirees retain First Amendment rights, and that the ability of elected representatives to discuss national security with the public, even imperfectly, is foundational to democratic oversight. These two positions cannot both be fully correct. One of them has to give way, and the courts are, slowly, being asked to decide which one. The immediate stakes for Kelly are significant. A classified disclosure finding could, in theory, carry serious consequences under federal law. The Espionage Act has been used against people with far less public access than a sitting senator. The legal bar is different for legislators under the speech or debate clause of the Constitution, but that protection has limits, and classified information is one of the areas where those limits remain contested. The broader stakes, however, are about something that affects every American: the right of Congress to perform genuine oversight of the military. If senators cannot receive classified briefings and then communicate, even in general terms, what they learn to their constituents, then classified briefings become a tool for insulating military policy from scrutiny rather than enabling it. That is a direct structural threat to how civilian control of the military is supposed to work. The fact that the grand jury declined to indict the lawmakers in February, despite the DOJ having opened a formal investigation, is a significant data point. 12 ordinary citizens looked at the evidence and decided there was no crime. That is not a minor event in this timeline. What happens next is genuinely uncertain. The appellate panel may rule against the Pentagon on the censure. The classified briefing review may conclude without action, or it may not. Kelly may face a new legal front simultaneously with winning on the old one. The depletion of U.S. weapons stockpiles, the substance of what he described, remains an open and urgent question, regardless of the legal outcome. And the broader question of how far executive authority over the military can extend into the lives of elected officials who once wore a uniform remains unresolved. The Iran war created conditions that accelerated all of this. It drew down weapons. It put new pressure on readiness. It gave lawmakers urgent things to say and gave the Pentagon reasons to want those things not said. That collision was always going to happen. It just happened to happen this Sunday morning on national television in a classified briefing that is now very much public news. This story is not finished. The appellate ruling is pending, the legal review is open. And the question of what America's actual weapons readiness looks like behind the classification markings is one that a lot of people in a lot of places are very interested in right now. Is Kelly a senator performing legitimate oversight, or did he step across a line that puts people at risk? Drop your honest take in the comments below. There's a real debate here worth having. And subscribe if you want this covered as the rulings come down, because the next development in this fight could come any day.